What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another Game Time Discussions. I'm Emrick. I'm sitting with Cameron Selby, and we're going to be going over the AFC East this time around for our Outlook videos. A lot of fun in the AFC East. You can look at teams that overperformed in the Buffalo Bills, of course, and then teams that are rebuilding completely, like the New England Patriots. A lot of good stuff, though, I think, in the AFC East in years to come. We'll talk about the New York Jets, though, and see if they can get their stuff figured out, though, because that's one of the ones that I'm like, oh. So
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple of teams kind of in weird spots of like, are they going to progress or are they going to go backwards?
Right.
This team is not one of those teams. They had a weird year this past year, which we called out. Last year they had the most cap space and they did nothing with it. And we were just like, they're re-signing their guys. It's kind of weird how many guys they're re-signing. It's not that the approach was weird. It was the guys and the duration of those contracts that they were doing. Right. But New England, it was a weird year that they just was their worst roster in a long time, and they just decided to weather the storm. So they were competitive for a lot of the season. Were sneakily in the game for a lot of the opponents and matchups that they were, but at the end of the season, there was a good stretch where they had the first pick, and they won a couple games to kick themselves out of contention for that. But they go into a new offseason. Mike Vrabel is their new head coach. To me, that's the best hire of the entire coaching cycle.
Mm-hmm.
Him returning, used to be a player. This is not a part of the cursed Bill Belichick coaching tree that has gone awry going to other franchises. He went to multiple teams, Houston and then Tennessee and then Cleveland. He's been to multiple places and he's kind of succeeded mostly everywhere he's gone. He was one of the best DCs for Houston. I was really wanting him to be the Bill O'Brien successor, and he just went a year early to Tennessee and took them to an AFC Championship game. They were the 1 seed one year. They knocked off Brady in his final game in New England. So he did a lot right with something like Tennessee, which is not accustomed to having consistent success. He brings back Josh McDaniels for the third time as a OC for New England. He's not a good head coach, but he's just been an awesome OC. And sometimes we see with Steve Spagnuolo with Kansas City, sometimes you're just an elite a coordinator, and if that's your MO, that's your MO. Sometimes you got to chase the bag or the whatever, but NFL just kind of goes through their coaches like trash if it doesn't work out immediately. So he went to Denver, didn't work out a long time ago, went back for 9 years as an OC for New England, won a couple more Super Bowls, then left to the Raiders. Again, didn't work out, but guess what? He's back in New England, and it's the right time because they have the most cap space, $120 million. That is nearly $30 million more than the next best team.
Yeah.
Last year they had the most cap space, but again, didn't do anything with it. So now not only do you have the cap space, you have a quarterback on a rookie deal who had nothing to work with. The 32nd ranked offensive line, they were not good, allowing pressures. Receiving-wise, nobody had more than 674 yards. That was Hunter Henry, not even their receiver. Nobody had more than 3 receiving touchdowns. Yet he still passed the eye test to me.
Oh, yeah.
Which, to me, that was the scariest one. And I was saying kind of religiously, don't rush Drake May because you can break him because they didn't have an offensive mind. They didn't have the skill players, the offensive line to do anything.
Right.
And they really kind of forced him in early, and he didn't break. He just kind of weathered, and obviously his stats don't compare to Jaden Daniels or Bo Nix or even Caleb Williams, who a lot of people are down on because of the weird rookie year he had. He still, to me, is fine, and you just basically have all the resources to build around your guy, and you found the most important position, which is a good way to start a new regime.
Yeah, and we knew coming into last year, and when we were talking about draft stuff, it's like, oh, well, if you pick Drake May, or whoever gets drafted to 3 is going to have one of the hardest times figuring it out.
This wasn't a Drake May thing. This was a New England.
New England thing, absolutely, and that was the biggest part of this. So if it was Jaden Daniels here, he didn't have the same year he had in Washington. He didn't have the greatest rookie quarterback season ever. So it wouldn't have been the same thing. And so Drake May, like you said, looked really good. The O-line has to get fixed. They had grades from left tackle to right tackle: 54, 48.6, 58.7, 65.2, and 38.4.
Rough.
Can't happen. So
No.
you're gonna have to, and I think free agency is going to tell us a lot about like what they want to do, because they could go out and get a Trey Smith like we talked about. They could go find some of the someone at right tackle or left tackle and start replacing that way. They're also going to use the draft. They're gonna have a lot of options on how they're going to want to piece their team together, and that's the really fun part about this team, is because it's not going to look anything like last year, but we're also not going to know anything until it starts to happen.
Yeah, and I've told you kind of off air that I think the draft at the very moment truly starts at 4. I know that there's uncertainty in the top 3 who goes where at the moment, but you kind of have an idea. But they're the first team that we know aren't going to take a quarterback, and they're just going to operate as best player available. And that's a huge benefit because of the fact that somebody extra is going to fall down to you. Very well, Travis Hunter, who's a lot of people's number 1 prospect, not ours, but it is what it is. Falling to 4 to New England,
sure,
awesome. Mason Graham, falling to 4, love it.
Yep.
First offensive lineman.
Yeah, whoever you like.
We may not value them as highly there. Don't fault you for it because of how bad they were last year. So they could go in a lot of ways, and like you said, free agency is going to tell us a lot because that money is going to be spent this year because they know it's going to turn around. On top of that, they have a division that they can really capitalize on and really close the gap significantly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that they could be a dark horse to win it all in terms of the division, but I mean, there's 2 teams heading in the wrong direction and one team that is up top that exceeded expectations, but also has no cap space and no wiggle room to really go anywhere else. So really exciting opportunity as a Patriot fan. We have a couple of fans of the show, Vic and Griffin, that are Patriot fans, and I said this as soon as we got Victor Wembanyama as a Spurs fan. I view New England as the same way.
As the Spurs,
because it's a bottom 5 roster that's just like, hey, you were spoiled with the not only the success you had, the duration of how long it was. It was an unprecedented run that will never be repeated.
Right.
A 20-year run like that, similar to San Antonio. So Spurs had to just take 1 year to get their guy. New England, you bottomed out for 1 year, and supposedly, I don't know if Drake May is an equivalent to Victor,
not Victor, but
his significance as the most important position on the field. You got your guy. And now everybody in a bad quarterback class is trying to figure out what to do. You're good in a bad class. Now you can benefit on other people making the bad decisions that they make. So they can go in so many different directions, but I think the only way that they are going to go is up. So I'm really optimistic about New England, what they can do this year.
And Teteroa McMillan's there. And if they want to get Drake May, first wide receiver off the board, that's an option. I mean, truly, I don't see that happening. I think out of everything, what's going to happen is we're going to see a very much we're gonna see the head coach take over and build from the inside out like we've seen him do in the past.
Exactly.
And we're going to see a bunch of offensive linemen come to be the new faces of this team along with Drake May. And it's going to be really fun because they're going to be running the ball. There's a really deep running back class. I'm sure they're going to find somebody to pair with Ramondre Stevenson. And, I think they're, like you said, they're going up. And that's the cool part about this.
Right. Yeah, and as of right now, I'm trying to find them actually real quick. In terms of over-under right now, their preseason over-under is 4.5.
Oh, I was going to say 5.5.
Absolutely. Even if it's 6.5.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I'm hammering it.
Yeah.
So 4.5, that's probably going to rise after the moves that they make. Obviously, this is before free agency.
Right.
We got a couple weeks to go, but yeah, I'm very optimistic about Patriots fans. So maybe that'll piss you off because you're just tired of seeing Patriots win. But at the end of the day, it's a new Patriot way, so to speak, and we'll just kind of see what happens.
Yeah, no one of the old regime is there except for, I guess, Robert Kraft.
Yeah. But he's one of the owners that he likes to be involved, but he's a very
it's your job. This is your job.
Yeah,
I pay your check.
Bill Belichick was GM / head coach.
Right.
He wasn't the owner / head coach, which neither one really works out. Has a track record of having success, but at the end of the day, that's kind of the guy that had all the power is gone. Mm-hmm. So at the end of the day, I think they're in a good spot
for sure. And then a team that isn't as yeah.
Let's get somber for a second.
Yeah, we switch over. Get your violins out. You know,
Mm-hmm.
It's the Jets have a lot of stuff to fix. But the funny thing is, I actually like their roster a lot in like certain ways. Like I like their defense, I like their cornerbacks, I like their safety. Like I like some of the stuff they do. But the problem is they're aging out certain positions. Both tackle spots are aging out. You got your quarterback issue, which we're gonna have to figure out. I don't know what to do. Aaron Rodgers is gone. That is the end of that. And figuring out a quarterback, it could be a draft pick. Maybe they go Jackson Dart. That would be rushing him into something, kind of like we just said with Drake May. Don't do that, but they might. I don't know what's going to happen with Devontae Adams, which you're going to get into here in a second, of course. And then defensive line-wise, they are not as dominant as they have been in the past. So
yeah, they the Jets were the biggest shame on me team.
Oh yeah,
of 2024 for
Completely
me.
Agree.
Because it's not like I bat 1,000 when I do predictions. I'm wrong on sometimes, and if I'm wrong, this guy had some injuries. Like, oh, they only lost by 3, or like I can defend like a Chicago take that we had all day.
Oh yeah,
long,
yeah, for
right?
sure.
I can't defend at the end going with the Jets to win the East. I'm sick that I did that. Which it wasn't like I was on a limb doing that. I mean,
no, I was with you.
You were with me. A lot of the public, we weren't on board with them being dark horse Super Bowl threats like a lot of people had. But at the end of the day, I told you in our final predictions video, I'm worried about the culture and the locker room of the Jets.
Yeah, that was
and
after.
That is exactly what just completely unraveled this team.
That was after the Aaron Rodgers not showing up and stuff like that. I will say, yes, I pushed for the Jets to win it, but it was, if you just like looked at paper, like talent was there, and they had the schedule. That was the biggest thing. They had the schedule to do it.
We were like, hey, they're gonna start like 5-2 at worst, and I think all these other teams are gonna be 3-3 or 3-4 or worse, and they're just gonna have a leg up going into the tough parts. But they never even got there because they were just upset by teams they shouldn't have lost to very early, and it just kind of snowballed. But like you said, Aaron Rodgers, they informed him he's no longer going to be with the team.
Right.
They traded for his buddy Devontae Adams, and all of a sudden now his status is unknown. But moving on from him, you don't eat any dead cap. They will save $29 million, and usually with teams that it's not like they don't have cap space, but they're kind of limited for the moves that they're going to have to make. That's going to open up a lot to where I don't even know if Devontae wants to be there without Aaron Rodgers. So, I think their culture and locker room was so fractured.
Yes.
This year that win-losses do not matter in 2025. What matters is building a culture. And Aaron Glenn, I don't know how much I'll love him as a head coach, but he understands the Jets because he's a former player similar to Mike Vrabel going to the Patriots. Mm-hmm. And I have confidence that at the very least, maybe he's not the tenured coach, but he's the Bill Parcells-esque player or a situation that I mentioned with Dallas, how he just comes in and he fixes the culture, and then the next guy takes the lead with the roster that was constructed. That's kind of what I would give expectations for the Jets. I think I know you said that you like a lot of pieces that they have, but a lot of them not only played poorly,
right.
There's so many holes at the important positions. Like we mentioned, Aaron Rodgers being released, both tackle spots for the 5 DBs, pass rushers, like all the important spots are just not there at all. And I have no clue how many people they can actually buy in, similar to how they were a hot free agent destination for the last 2 seasons because of the Aaron Rodgers hype.
The problem for me is this culture hasn't really changed. Like, you might have one 12-5 year. You might have one, but Cleveland had a 12-5 year. And I feel very similarly to that, like, feel of like this team can't and has not fixed it.
And that's completely fair. I mean, the seeing goes for Sam Darnold and how they didn't set him up for success.
Right.
And they've done that multiple times on multiple.
They might do it again.
Guys.
Jackson Dart goes there. That would be a very, very similar situation.
Yeah, I just think that this one feels a little different, and whether or not they are a success in the Aaron Glenn era, I think that at the very least they won't be the laughing stock.
No, I agree with that.
So that's what I would just kind of, again, temper expectations. We're just doing outlooks for 2025, and I honestly think that this team is clear-cut the bottom of the division. unless they just kind of all of a sudden make a ton of moves that's just like, oh, they're the Washington, but they don't have the cap space to do that. So, again, win total, staying away from. I don't know how people are going to view them going into training camp and stuff, but right now, to me, I think the overarching goal is bigger than just wins versus losses and can you get away from 5-12. If they went 5-12 again, but it's a better culture, that's a win to me.
Yeah,
and
that's
then
fair.
next year is how you can start building and then figuring out and taking more steps.
One thing I want to ask you, and I'm just looking up some years. Okay, so in 2021, the Jets hired Robert Saleh.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, just making sure. Okay, so you went 4-13, 7-10, 7-10, 2-3. Is this a better signing? Because at that point, Robert Saleh was the big name defensive guy, and Aaron Glenn is that this time around, in my opinion.
I think it's a lateral signing.
That's what that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, so I think it's a similar signing, but with Robert Saleh, obviously he departed, and it was another kind of had to be escorted by security, wouldn't be allowed to speak with the team. Like, it was all bad, right? But his side of the ball was fine.
Right.
And as soon as he left, it was gone. And we went into the year first PFF ranked offensive or defensive line, first ranked linebacker core, first ranked secondary.
Corners,
That's why we were both convinced, like, hey, the Jets at the very minimum are going to be 11-6. I don't know if they'll have the tiebreaker, but they should be in there. And defense wasn't the problem the entire season. It was Aaron Rodgers and all the yes guys that he allowed them to surround him with.
Right.
And once all that failed, there was no backup plan. And the backup plan was scapegoating the one thing that was working on your team. And that's what completely tore the season apart. So, and it was, I think, honestly, I like, karma, like turning its head on people that deserve it. And that was one of those moments of, as soon as he got fired after the England trip, where they lost to, I think it was Jacksonville, and Aaron Rodgers had a 3-interception game, and they held Jacksonville, but the only time Jacksonville scored was when they had short fields and stuff. And then they fired Robert Saleh, and the very next week, I think they gave up over 30, and it was just a disaster. And then they just could not stop anybody. Sauce Gardner, who people were viewing as the next
I love Sauce
and stuff, awful year, couldn't tackle at all. And then, like I said, nothing worked at all. I don't know a single bright spot. Even Breece Hall as a fantasy pick that people were really high on and raving, and he just wasn't used at all like you would think he would be. And yeah, it was all bad. And I don't know, again, win-losses shouldn't be your priority this year. It's just restructuring and trying to go as soon as possible from the shit show that it was to it's like, okay, we're not as good, but it's at least I like you. And I can hug you in the locker room and embrace and kumbaya and stuff, because that's really an important thing. And how quick turnarounds happen is having good camaraderie, bringing in good locker room guys. And it just all was bad. Everything they brought in, Hassan Reddick, I didn't even mention that, but trading your best pass rusher away for him who didn't even want to be there, and you just let him hold out and then caved and then signed him for the year anyway, and now he's gone. And then the third-round pick that you gave up for essentially one sack for a third-round pick, all of that was bad. So, yeah, a lot of work to do for the Jets. But, again, to me, win-loss should not be the priority this year.
Fair. Now a team that I have a lot of mixed emotions about.
Yep.
And that's always a thing, I think, with this team, because it's driven on the wrong things of how I like football, if that makes sense. Like, my philosophies of football are very different than what I think, Miami kind of lives and breathes on, because at the end of the day, they can't run the ball. And I love Achane, but that doesn't mean that he's
That's not why they brought him.
Yeah, he's not there for.
He was their wide receiver 2 for the most of the year.
Yeah, I mean, it's very different. Yeah, no, you can love Achane for that reason, but I don't think he's a top 15 running back as a running back. He just is really good at catching the ball. That's great. So I think my philosophies are hurt when it comes to just talking about the Dolphins. Some things, of course, they need to get. They have one of their corner. They need a corner this next year. They need to figure out what they're doing with these edge rushers, because, of course, Bradley Chubb missed. Did he play? I don't think he played at all, right?
I don't think so.
I don't think he played at all.
Jalen Phillips came back, but then re-aggravated.
Right, that's right.
An injury, not his Achilles, but he basically came back and was just very non-factor, which we didn't expect.
Yeah, no,
off
yeah,
an Achilles
exactly.
He would do anything.
But it's just like they have no defense. Both their safeties. Like, what are you going to do? They're not going to re-sign their best safety in Holland. Like, I don't understand that. Their offensive line, both of their guards are leaving, and they were awful, so let them go and find somebody else. But it's just like there's a lot of things I dislike, and maybe not using Tyreek Hill correctly, and Tua and his injuries, and I don't know. I'm a little uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah, it's. I think I wrote on the next page the one thing that really perfectly describes the team in one word is fragile.
Oh, yeah.
And the reason that I say that is because literally there's so much that is just on the verge of just having this team break down. Maybe not chemistry and just bad locker room vibes like we saw with the Jets that we just alluded to, but like they just signed Tua. And then another concussion later, which that was his biggest concern. And all of a sudden, it's like you just signed him, and now you can't trust. I don't remember seeing a offense go as upside down.
Oh, it's terrible.
And it's not like Tua is a top 10 quarterback or even close to it, but he fits perfectly what
Mike
McDaniel
the timing and things like that.
But like you can't have just doing a range, but the 12th to 16th best quarterback, wherever you want to rank him, miss games.
Yeah.
And you go into the worst offense in football. And that's what we saw as soon as he went down in week 2 against the Bills on Thursday Night Football. After that, I couldn't watch them.
No, it was awful. I was at the gym. I left my house and went to the gym. And I hate going to the gym. I hate it was that bad.
It was an awful product, and I don't know if that's an indictment on Mike McDaniel himself, or if it's just, hey, they have so much built around this one guy that if he's not there, then it all goes to shit. Which those are not typically the teams that advance very far, because like you have to be able to win in other ways. The one thing you can give kudos to the Cowboys, at least in the years of Dak, because he's had a broken thumb, he's had broken leg, he's had the hamstring this year. Cooper Rush has come in. He's not close to Dak.
No.
I don't care what went. But the thing is, as soon as he comes in, I don't feel like, Dallas can't win this game. But as soon as anybody comes in, and they've tried multiple guys, comes in for Tua, we've got no shot.
Right.
And the other problem is they can't play in the cold. And
I was going to say that. You're talking about fragile?
Yeah.
Like
fragile.
Soft.
Yeah.
Talking about soft.
The health of the most important position that they just signed can't be trusted. You talked about both safeties, also both guards are free agents. They have no cap space. They're one of the few teams that have negative going into the season. And then guys that you would think, Jalen Ramsey, kind of a cap casualty. Nope, you just re-signed him, so he will go against your cap if you trade or cut him.
Yeah.
Tua, you just re-signed him. Like your biggest cap hits. Kind of similar to the problem that the New Orleans Saints have is just nobody's going to help you get into that number that you really think should. That's like, you're not panning out, so let's release you. They have some work to do, and I just don't know
Tyreek.
What way? Yeah, Tyreek into the year just immediately after the game, just like, hey, whether like I don't want to be somewhere that blah 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 blah. It doesn't matter, and the thing is, like, you went there for the money. Let's be real.
Mm-hmm.
And you were the same person that was like, Tua is like, there's no downgrade from Patrick Mahomes to Tua.
Yeah, crazy,
which nobody believed for 1 second. But at the same time, that's coming from first source from your mouth. Nobody misquoted you when you were saying those kinds of things. And then all of a sudden, down year after another tough year with Tua, and you don't want to be there anymore, and you're just like, I need to think about my family. You got your money. Like the family is not moving from team to team to. Because you're not going to get paid much more than the high cap hit that you have right now, which is over $30 million. So obviously he wants to win, and there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, priorities are a little mixed up, and he's a huge name to watch because he's their best player at the end of the day. And if they move on from him, and then you have the fragility of a fragile Tua, and can't play in the cold, have no roster.
Yeah.
That or the roster lacks depth, and you can't sign anybody to really combat that. It just feels like they're a couple moves away from just completely blowing it up. Not just like, oh, they're gonna have another down year. It's like completely like, all right, damn the cap hit. We're getting rid of Tua. We're moving on from Tua. Mike McDaniel's gone. All these GMs and coordinators are not working out.
Yeah.
And
just clean house, basically.
Exactly. Like they're on the verge of cleaning house, and you shouldn't feel that way with the quarterback in his prime. And that's the tough thing to think about.
Yeah, I know. I agree. Jalen Waddle had the best playmaker on their team was Jonnu Smith. You know, like there wasn't like this we ever felt like, oh, Tyreek is doing this or Jalen Waddle, oh man, like what we should be feeling with these guys. It's and then like you said, I mean, I can't get over watching Skylar Thompson, Tyler Huntley. Like I just can't. I can't do it. So no, I just man, Miami is a tough team, but that's a really fun team to talk about.
Yeah,
you know what
exactly.
I mean? Like it makes it a really fun team to like see what they're gonna do because all those guys that are going into free agency, a lot of them aren't coming back. Like shoot, I'm damn near any of them.
How they could
any of them. So and there's some good ones on there. Like like we said, Holland, Poyer, Calais Campbell, Liam Eichenberg. I wish he was not injured this last year, but like it's gonna be it's gonna be interesting for sure. So
it's gonna be a team that I think is just more so, hey, what fantasy players are we gonna want to see, and how high or how much exposure should I have? That's gonna be the main kind of optimistic conversation that we'll have with them. I don't know. I don't see a path of them contending or even being a playoff team.
Right.
And that's tough to think about for, again, some quarterback that you just had in his prime.
Okay. I have a question.
God.
How do you rank, like at this moment in time? Because I think this is actually a very interesting topic, but how do you rank Miami, the Jets, and the Patriots just like to be second in the division or even win the division? I mean, but like who is the best of, like how do you rank those three teams?
I'm very comfortable putting New England.
That's what I'm thinking. I'm agreeing with you. I completely agree.
I'm very comfortable with it. And again, the Jets could be another 5-6 win team that is more competitive and it's a better locker room.
Right.
I don't think that they can just we're good again because we don't have the quarterback there, and like they're also losing guys more so than just like, it's just addition by subtraction with the one person. It's a complete overhaul that they're going to have to go through with, which they do have some studs, but the depth is not there anymore, and they don't really have a ton of wiggle room or, investment to do anything. And then Miami, I just don't trust them at all. And at the end of the day, they're 1-2 injury away from possibly being a bottom 3 roster next year.
Yeah.
And I don't even know if they'll be third in that hypothetical. That's how bad it looked when Tua went out. So if hypothetically, and I don't wish this or want to speak it into existence, but say another concussion happens to Tua early on, how do you play him again?
I don't know how they allowed it already.
Yeah.
Because I remember watching the one where like he just basically was out,
Exactly.
It's like,
so we have a track record of what they look like without him.
It's awful.
And it's not watchable. And so I just can't trust that. And then when he's in there, yes, it's sexy to score points, but at the end of the day, I don't think I can find a way for them to squeeze out or win over any of the top 8 teams in the AFC. And that's just a good guess, but we can go one by one in a later exercise and just be like, hey, in a playoff game, even if it's in Miami, let's say no cold weather.
Right.
Them versus them at home for some reason, would you pick them in a playoff game? And I would say that probably there's only a couple teams that I would pick, and those are the Raiders-esque teams that, we got here. I don't know how we got there, but we did.
Right.
And then it's like, okay, yeah, we're going to put you down. Kind of similar to Houston did with Cleveland 2 years ago with Joe Flacco at the helm and stuff.
Yeah.
Like, those are the only types of teams that's like, oh, yeah, Miami, they're going to win. But other than that, every single other team, I would not trust them in any way against them, even in good game environments.
Yeah. Well, I want to ask everybody watching to go and comment how they would rank these three teams. And even add Buffalo. We're gonna mostly see Buffalo at 1, of course, but go ahead and put that in the comments, and then like the video and subscribe. We appreciate y'all hanging out with us, but yeah, we definitely need to talk about how big. First off, let's really talk about something. How big the gap is between a team in the Buffalo Bills, who we. Full transparency, I thought they were going to be, I think 9-8, 10-7. I think 10-7 was where we kind of landed with them, and which was good. We also didn't pick them to win the East. We had
them as a playoff team.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
Neither of us at the end of the day, and both of us, I believe, had the same record as the Jets. So it's not like they were even behind them by a lot. It was tiebreaker that both of us coincidentally had them as a wild card team. But they were similar to Miami last year, if you remember. Neither of them had cap space, and a lot of them we were going to lose depth.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just like, I don't know if you can just keep on saying, hey, Josh Allen, take us there. But damn it, he did it again.
He's so good, man.
He won MVP,
in
albeit controversial.
Weirdest way.
You don't see second-team All-Pros winning MVPs very often, but it happened this year. Whether it's warranted or not, it doesn't matter. But I think that the gap, and I saw, again, Nick Wright, one of my favorite guys to listen to, because he puts things in perspective in ways that other people don't. But essentially, hit Josh Allen versus Lamar Jackson, the talent gap isn't wide enough for Lamar to have 3 MVPs and Josh Allen to have 0. It just isn't. It flat out isn't. And between the two, who's the one guy that has literally gave Patrick a run for his money in the postseason or even in the regular season for that matter? It's Josh. Because Lamar hasn't shown up. His worst games have been in the postseason. Josh Allen has elevated his game on top of already having the numbers. And he just cannot get over the hump. And a lot of it not necessarily has to do with him, but it's just, hey, you weren't perfect.
This year he got outmanned at the end of the day. Because the problems that we saw preseason where we were like, this is why we're not saying this team is going to be a 12, 13 win team, is because of just they don't have the talent.
Right.
Necessarily. Like receiver wise, there's no talent in general right now. Khalil Shakur being the best player. Amari Cooper coming in, not doing anything as a hopeful veteran. Keon Coleman still has the same issues he had in college. That hasn't changed, crazy enough.
Drafting Kincaid in the first round and then just not using him.
Using him, yeah. But so Josh Allen finally ran into the wall that we expected him to run into multiple times during the regular season.
Yeah. Through no fault of his own, but we expected a wall. It just came, later than expected. And again, it's not like he played poorly in the AFC Championship game.
No.
But he had to be perfect. In all of the 4 losses that he's had to be perfect. And one mistake here or there was the reason that there was a game-winning field goal or game-winning touchdown. They didn't get the ball back. He went for 400-plus yards and scored with 13 seconds left, and they didn't get the job done 4 years ago in the infamous game. And those kinds of things are just like, hey, there was a couple plays before where it's just like you missed some throws, and literally that is the 13-second difference. So with Buffalo, once again, they're in a similar boat to last year where at least this year they're not really losing as much depth. They lost a ton of depth on the defensive line this past year. They were able to bring a couple back, but not nearly. Obviously, they had, I think, 6 defensive linemen that were free agents or pending free agents last year, and they brought 2 back. This year, they have Rasul Douglas, a really solid corner that is free agent. DeMar Hamlin, okay. I mean, I think he's, at this point, with all due respect, overhyped based on the story and stuff.
Right. No, I don't think DeMar Hamlin.
This was his first year actually having relevant play time, and he actually played well. But I think he's going to get paid a hefty deal that he doesn't deserve.
He was 85th out of 98 safeties, graded wise, and then Rasul Douglas 102nd out of 116.
Yeah.
So those are the 2 guys that are free agents, pending free agents.
So, yeah, and with that being said, Amari Cooper, they traded him in a contract year. It didn't work out, but no fault of their own. Matt Collins, trying, but at the end of the day, you got to start hitting on some guys because you can't just rely on Josh Allen to save you every single time, because at some point he's going to deal with injuries or isn't able to run for 15 touchdowns, and then what?
Yeah. Question, because we did just have this little conversation. Who would you rather have? Lamar Jackson or Josh Allen.
Josh Allen.
All day long, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not even a question. And I don't know how you're supposed to rank them as players or whatever, because Lamar always has great stats. That's not a question. And stats aren't everything.
It's biggest moments and being able to not dip.
Yeah, the competitor that Josh Allen is what I like. I love competitors, man. When I want to draft people or I see these types of guys that I want to get on my team, that's what I want is competitors. Someone that's going to compete even when we backs against the wall, and that's what Josh does. So
and I think a lot of the Bills and being able to overachieve is the ball bounced their way in a lot of ways this year.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously I wouldn't say that even though Buffalo finished as a top 5 offensive line, I don't know talent wise if they're not top 5 offensive line, but they allowed a league low 14 sacks, which was 8 better than the next best team.
Mm-hmm.
Turnover differential, that's a very volatile stat, but a very important stat. Plus 24 was 8 higher than the next best.
Damn.
Those kinds of things don't just continuously routinely happen, and we've seen that time and time again where teams just like fall out flat on their face. It's like, yeah, you couldn't have 30 interceptions this year. Like, you got to win in other ways, and sometimes teams take steps back because of those very things. So you saw Dallas, how they were one of the most talented defenses 2 years ago because they were just getting pick sixes and fumbles and forced fumbles and sacks and all that stuff. And then all of a sudden this year had some depth injuries, had some cornerback injuries, and they couldn't force turnovers and then allowed the second most points of any other team. Just like that. And I know different coordinator and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, ball didn't bounce ways.
Yeah.
Had a significant effect on that roster and team. And so Buffalo having a team where it's not like they can make a ton of improvements. They can make some lateral moves or plug and play guys to mask. It's not like they have a ton of holes to fill. But at the same time, I don't think they're going to get significantly better. How we see Philly, how they have no holes and they have a couple of cap space to actually just put the nail in it and just be like, oh yeah, we also signed X. Mm-hmm. The top available guy at this position. It's just like, oh yeah, they're clear favorites now, and I don't know if that'll make anything of it, but they don't have that ability to even do that if they wanted to. So it'll be interesting to see. AFC, I actually have no idea how AFC is going to turn out at the top of things this year. So it's going to make it very exciting because we really only had the true Bengals, which obviously didn't make the playoffs, but they were the guys that we invested in were excellent.
Yeah.
Baltimore, Buffalo, Kansas City. We were like, it's those 4 teams and nobody else is really close to them. Well, this year, I just feel like it's going to be very, very wild, wild west in the AFC this year.
Well, if I have to bet on one player, it's Josh Allen. And I think that one thing that would be pretty, I mean, let's just talk about it. Shoot, why not? Because if we can play what ifs all day long, right?
Well, we have to. We got time to fill until free agency happens in 3 weeks.
Exactly. What if Tyreek Hill was on this team? Like, if you're talking about a bunch of lateral movements and things like that, but like Tyreek Hill wants out. What if Tyreek Hill was a Buffalo Bill? And I don't think they're going to do I don't think it'll ever happen. But
what I'll say is I think it'll help them get back to 12-5, 13-4, and just clearly win the division, because even if we're optimistic about New England, I think this is like a 3-4 game gap between second place and Buffalo going into next year, unless obviously Josh Allen goes down, which we're not going to anticipate or predict because he has no history of that. I don't think Tyreek Hill puts them over the top to be the team to beat.
Interesting. Okay. That was one of the ones that I was like, okay, maybe
and also,
this.
within division, Miami will not trade him away.
No, I know.
And also because of the contract situation with them, if they were to cut him post June 1st, which means that they get to divide the dead cap into two, they would still save negative $12 million against the cap this year. So Miami's lack of cap space isn't helped whatsoever by cutting Tyreek Hill. So they have to trade him and convince somebody to take on his contract so that they don't have the dead money, and they won't do that to Buffalo. I can promise that.
No, I agree. I was just asking if, like, when playoff times come around, you have no receiver that has this type of ability. Is Tyreek Hill able to put them into a situation where you're like, okay, they're going to win the AFC? No. Okay. I was wondering.
I would say as of right now, no.
Because stylistically, that's the only player that I can think of wide receiver wise, and they have a terrible wide receiver room right now.
For sure.
That has that style. that can do those things. So, yeah, I think we see the AFC East pretty similarly. Let me. Oh, that's not what I wanted to do. Sorry, guys. Let me.
But one quick point to your question. It's not like I don't think they have a chance to win it, even without Tyreek Hill. They bring back that same roster, and they still are a co-favorite or one of the 2 or 3 favorites to win the AFC. And I wouldn't be shocked at all if they did.
Right.
But I don't think that Tyreek Hill going there is going to. It warrants the odd jump that is going to happen, because if and when that move happens, they're going to jump to be the favorite in the conference. And I don't think that that's warranted. Okay. I think the odds should stay the same, and they wouldn't, and that's why I feel the way I do.
Okay. No, I get that. I think that, talking about the other teams that have to get better, I think they're still better than Baltimore. I still think they're better than KC with Tyreek Hill, is what I was thinking. And I think that's the only team that threatens them.
Yeah. I think it's wide open, and we could see a weird
something crazy
too.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's that wide open, and I was saying all along, even though Kansas City stayed my Super Bowl pick, that this was the last year in this rendition of it. That doesn't mean that Patrick Mahomes won't win a Super Bowl again, but I think he might go through a little bit of a drought in terms of AFC Championship appearances, because on all of a sudden he's rivaling, I guess, it's only two options between the West and the North in terms of toughest division in the conference. But if the Raiders nail their quarterback situation, all of the sudden, and on top of that, the Raiders have been competitive, very competitive with the Chiefs in recent years.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, you're not going automatically 6-0 every year in the division, and then say that jumps down to 3-3, and you go down to like 11-6.
Mm-hmm. All
of a sudden, I can see even though the Chargers finished on a dud, them having a better regular season record, or Denver having a better regular season record. I can't see the Raiders doing that, but I could see somebody forcing them to go on the road every single game of the postseason, and somebody catches them at the right time and finally getting over the hump. And that is the one way I see somebody like a Buffalo dethroning Kansas City in this 7-year run that they've been on, is basically the wishful thinking that somebody's going to make them not have to go to Kansas City to win the AFC Championship.
Yeah, finally, right? No, I completely agree. I think it's a fair statement. I think Buffalo with I don't know. So right now, I can't tell you who I think my favorite would be. I would love to see the Chargers. No It'd be funny as hell. I'd love to see the Chargers. Cincinnati, we talked about them already and their situation, and so that's tough.
Right now, in terms of Super Bowl odds, the Bills and the Ravens, for what it's worth, are tied at plus 700 to win the Super Bowl. That is just below Kansas City at plus 650.
Eagles?
Eagles are the favorite at plus 650 as well. But there's some books that are plus 600, which is why they have the tiebreaker with the Chiefs.
Gotcha.
But the next best team in the AFC is 22-1 on Bet 365, and I just think the odds are way too wide, and I'm not shocked at all to see one of these teams just find their way to just get over the top and somehow come out of nowhere to win the. I think NFC is clear cut. I think it's going to be
that's fair.
A San Fran, a Eagles, a Commanders, or a Lions. That's who's going to be representing the NFC.
Mm-hmm.
AFC, I am no longer confident it's the Chiefs. And with that being said, I don't necessarily mean that equals, it's only going to be Buffalo or Baltimore to usurp them.
Well, I tell you every time, I don't trust Baltimore, so I guess I have to trust Buffalo.
You've been batting 1,000 if you bet against them in the playoffs, so I would just do it until they prove you wrong.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
That's how I viewed the Eagles thing. Like, even though we picked them to win, we picked them to a close game, and even though they blew them out, their roster was better. Yeah. But I just didn't expect them to play a perfect game and Kansas City just not recover from their imperfect game. That's just kind of is what it is. And then somebody like the Ravens or like the Cowboys, if they go 14-3 and are the 1 seed, which won't happen this year.
No, yeah.
But if they are, that means nothing until you get to the NFC title game. After that, I don't give a damn what happens. But you got there, you proved me wrong to get there. It's like I'll believe it when I see it. There's certain things where it's just like I need to see something to fully invest my opinion on, okay, you can do this.
No, I have the same reservations. We talk about the draft class all the time, like production. Like it's the same thing for everything is like, I just want you to do it. Like let me believe that you can, and then I'll be like, oh, then I'll take in the body of work. Because some of these teams, they're more talented, like just like top to bottom if you looked at paper. But then when they go and play, it doesn't matter if you lose the game. Like, so we've seen that a lot recently, and I think Buffalo was the epitome of a team that probably wasn't nearly as talented as other teams, in my personal opinion.
Absolutely. And right now, for some reason, Buffalo is plus money to win the division, and I would hammer that and just wait 8 months for your money to come in if you have an extra $100 to spend.
Yeah.
Because there's no reason they shouldn't be like a minus 200 favorite to win the division.
Yeah, absolutely. Who's second?
Miami at plus 200, which is stupid.
That's crazy.
But, hey, remember what I said about the Commanders last year and how it was like, I'm not picking them to win the division, but they're a better bet than Dallas. They're a dark horse playoff team or threat. And I didn't pick them to go to the playoffs, but I was half right in that regard.
Yeah.
New England is 20-1 to win the division. I would hammer a sprinkle of that if I could and felt like doing that, because that's just too wide.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Feel pretty good about finishing second in the division.
For sure. But we appreciate y'all hanging out with us. It's been a fun video. Obviously, we've had a lot of scenarios going through this video, but this is the AFC East. 3 teams that are in question, and then 1 team that is, kind of continued to prove it to us. So we're going to keep letting them prove it and run with them. But we appreciate y'all hanging out with us, and we will see you. I don't even know what video is next. Who is it? Jacksonville?
Next is the AFC South.
AFC South.
And then we'll go into the what is that?
West.
The Raiders? Oh, AFC West.
The West,
so
baby.
South and the West. We'll clear out the AFC in next week.
Yeah.
But in the coming days, we will release our first mock of the draft season. And that was a whole lot of fun. The two of us and Dusty getting together. We're going to have more and more 3-person videos and stuff like that to engage and interact with one another. So that's gonna be a whole lot of fun. It's a long video, but we appreciate every second that you guys tune in for it. But we want you to leave comments because we want y'all to interact with us this off season. A lot of the draft content we did last year was the bulk of what we did, but we were so small and just starting and just awkward and getting through the things that it's just like we're a year removed, and this is the first we're officially year 2. We're in, and we feel like we're rocking and rolling with it. So we're excited, and we hope you guys are as well.
Yep. We got through our puberty. You know what I mean? But
real boy.
Yeah, exactly. But we appreciate you hanging out with us, and we'll see you on the next one.